Greetings, Empresses. Welcome once again to Conversations with my mother. This is my mother, Dr. Betty Burston.
And this is my daughter, Dr. Shatria Gallier.
So today, ladies, we're going to talk about something that is an age-old conversation. And people have pondered this topic for years, and philosophers have spent their lives trying to figure this out. So, of course, we are not here to give you the answers, but we are here to explore the topic of happiness. How many of you are happy? What is it that makes you happy? Those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. So, of course, I have to start off with the reading, as I usually do. And today's reading is coming from the book Calling in the One. And I mentioned this book to you before by Catherine Woodward Thomas. And this book is great because it's actually a workbook, and it has a lot of just hands-on practical activities that she takes you to clear the space for your beloved. But I think it's good, even if you're married, to go through this book. So I'm going to start off. And it says, the simple truth is that human beings need other human beings. And while men and women may not need one another for economic survival any longer, we do need one another for nurturing and for emotional well-being. We all need to feel connected, valued, cared for, and respected. So what are your thoughts about that, Mommy?
Oh, I believe in happiness. But I also think it's important for us, when we begin to talk about happiness, to expand our definition, because it's more than just happiness.
Yeah.
Some days what we want is contentment. Other days we want joy. Other days, so we have talked before about how important it is for us to look up synonyms and look up other words so that we can get the right shade of meaning. So really what we're talking about is being able to experience positive emotion, the positive aspects of life. And a lot of that has to do with the internal us.
Yes. And we're also different too. Yes. So what is happiness for some is going to be completely different for the other, right?
I disagree.
Interesting. Okay, so go ahead.
I think that if we were to do an anthropological study, and we were to study peoples from all different ways of life, and in other countries, people from developing countries, people from countries that are more traditional, that we would find some of the same things create happiness in all of us.
And actually, while we were preparing for the show and we were updating our research, I do recall some of the things that we came across in our research was that whole idea of social connectedness, which is why I talked about that in the reading for today. And that whole idea of not just connecting to our mates, but connecting to a person who's walking by on the street and actually smiling at them. And I look at it as a chain reaction, right? So what else?
Well, there's an entire body of research in sociology that looks at happiness and psychology, with social psychology and all of that looks at. And some of the things that research shows, in fact, one of the reasons we do these conversations is because I want you to be happy. But not only do I want my birth daughter, I want all of you out here who are my daughters in spirit and my daughters through other linkages to be happy. Yeah. And the research shows one of the reasons I emphasize the importance of marriage and a mate, and I have to emphasize that when I say marriage, I think any person, whether they independently of sexual preference, should be allowed to marry. Yes. And that's one of the things that research shows is associated with happiness. Another thing is having a support system. And we have to be very, very careful, though, in choosing our support system.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we were talking a little bit earlier about how do we decide who to bring into our network of friends, and how do we decide people who we might need to get rid of in our network. And you know, we've been kind of having a little conflict about this, ladies, because there are certain people recently who I've had in my life who were great people, but I realized that it was a time to release them from my life so that I could open the space for people who I felt were more aligned with what I was searching for. But Mommy doesn't feel that way, right? What's your thoughts about the circle? How do we choose our circle of friends first?
Well, first, now we have to, once we choose them very, very carefully, there's something that's called similarity theory. And one of the things I like in my circle are other people who are similar to me, because I don't like to have to explain myself. And I don't mean similar in terms of economic status, in terms of ethnicity, but similar in terms of our approach to the universe. I consider myself something that I call an outsider. Some people would consider me as being kind of crazy. I hear different drum beats. I like other outsiders to be a part of my circle. I like very creative people. So it's different for different people what type of circle can contribute to your happiness. But for me, once my circle is selected, it's almost like a marriage for me. I've been friends, as you know, they're your aunts. They've been around for 30 and 40 years. It doesn't mean that we've had perfect relationships. It simply means for me, once I decide that we are compatible enough for you to be in the circle, I recognize that we are all fragile.
Yes.
We are all imperfect. And on any given day, you may not contribute to my happiness, but on average, something about our relationship contributes to my happiness. Because of that, I will forgive you your imperfections, as I hope you will forgive me my imperfections.
Absolutely, and actually I want to read another segment of the book for today where she gets into this whole idea of forgiveness. Now also I want to highlight that she talks in this book about toxic ties too, where we stay toxically connected to people over and over again, and how that inhibits ourselves from moving forward.
That. I've mentioned before that there are certain types of things, whether it's a male or female, that should not be accepted, that you write a contract with people that tells them how how they treat you.
Yeah.
And so there are some things that should not be accepted.
Yeah.
And you know that you before you even bring them into your circle, you can recognize that within the first few contacts with a person, whether you can bring them into your circle.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go ahead and share what she says. Forgiveness is actually a deliberate and intentional act. It is a decision that restores vitality, possibility, and integrity in your life. And I think, one of the points I want to also raise when I think about happiness and going through this transformative process that I've been going through, ladies, that remember I shared with you on the very first webisode how I am really committed to being the person who I know that I'm meant to be in this world, and letting go of a lot of those childhood things and those stories that I've told myself from the past. So one of the things that she was talking, as I was saying, was forgiveness. But for you, at what point do we forgive and let go versus forgive and keep in our circle?
Well, we know that because we have our internal clock that's going to tell us, is this someone that should be in my life? You can forgive people and they go out of your life. You can forgive them and keep them in. But before if we can come back to that, there are a few other points I want to make.
Okay.
Is that research shows that in addition to mates and in addition to having a strong social support system, that there are things such as music can make us happy. Having an environment, the colors even that we have in our internal environment can end up contributing to our happiness. The foods we eat can even contribute to our happiness. If you notice how sweets they're like, and I love sweet things, by the way, but they're like a drug. They kick you up, and then they can drop you down. Caffeine kicks you up, and it's artificial happiness, and then it crashes you. So there are just a range of things, earth things, the beauty of the landscape, nature, all of those things are things that contribute to our happiness. Creativity contributes to our happiness.
Absolutely. But there's also something I want to talk about too in terms of, moving beyond the whole idea of forgiveness, is actually also thinking about how do we manifest ourselves in a new way? In other words, how do we get rid of our old stories that we've told ourselves in the past about ourselves that may not be true, like those old ways of thinking? What do you think about that?
I'm not a good person. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a mommy.
Yes, I know.
So that's a question that would be better left to a psychologist or psychiatrist. But I will say this, and I mentioned this before, that the foundation of happiness, the foundation of all is a relationship with God. And not just a relationship of believing, but a relationship of knowing that God sits next to us, walks with us, is constantly there.
Yes.
And that to the degree that we can emulate God, it helps to create happiness in our life.
Absolutely.
Which means,
in whatever way you may call God, whether it's Allah, Jehovah.
Exactly. And so I think that that's the critical part, because I do think that can help with healing in general. Is knowing, and then knowing, once you have that faith, you know that nobody can hurt you.
Absolutely.
And it allows you to then forgive even those who try.
Well, I did want to mention, though, one of the great things that I love to do also are affirmations, positive affirmations. So I focus on whatever affirmation it is, or whatever quality I want to focus on for today. So today I may have woken up and said, today I will represent grace and ease, or today I will represent peace and prosperity. Today, and that's a great way to help us rethink those old ideas that we have about the world. But again, ladies, we aren't therapists, we aren't psychologists. These are, again, are just conversations that we have with each other, and these are lifelong conversations that philosophers and theologists have spent lifetimes on. So we will continue with this conversation again at some point. But ladies, what are your thoughts? What are the things that make you happy? What are the things that inspire you? Who do you represent as an empress in this world? What do you want to be known as your mark? Anything else?
And I also, and this is very important, is that in a sense as women, we are the carriers of happiness. In your household, you can not have very little money. And you can cook a wonderful meal and it makes your family happy. Yes. Your family can come through the door, and because you have that smile on your face, it makes them happy. Yes. So it's very important for us as women to think about how we can make ourselves happy and how we can make others happy.
So Empresses, I just want to leave you with, you are a divine ray of light, and there's nothing or no one that can take your happiness away from you. Okay? Much love.